Good afternoon. Welcome to the Horticultural Crops Research Station and the 2025 Sweet Potato Field Day. I'm Hunter Barrier, the superintendent here, and I'd like to thank you for joining us today. I know whether you're a grower, whether you work in research, extension agent, agronomist, whatever you do, I know this is a busy time of year with the harvest and fall planting, and so I really appreciate you yielding several hours of your time to join us today. This event is organized by A&T State University and the North Carolina Sweet Potato Commission, and they have put together a really good program for you today. I figure probably most of you have been to the research station here before, right? Anybody never been to the Horticultural Crops Research Station? Just a couple, just one or two? Okay, so I'm still going to give the research station spiel because I think it's really cool. So we are one of 18 research stations located across the state, and North Carolina is really unique in that we have this extensive network of stations. 12 of our stations are owned and operated by the North Carolina Department of Agriculture, which you're on a North Carolina Department of Ag research station, and 6 stations are owned and operated by A&T State University. And we've got stations all across the state. We cover every growing environment, every soil type, every topography from the mountains to the sea, and do research and support research projects on crops and livestock produced in those areas. So here at the Horticultural Crops Research Station, we have been supporting the North Carolina vegetable growers since 1970. And our primary research focus areas are plant breeding, with the sweet potato breeding program being one of our primary resource users, right? So we do a lot of work with sweet potato breeding here. In the past, we've also done a lot of work with cucurbit breeding, and now we're doing some work with new and emerging crops breeding. So if you see that field out to your right, there's some canaf growing, there's some bombara nuts growing, so all kinds of cool stuff going on here. We also do a lot of work with weed science. So the 20-acre block under irrigation of really good ground, that's where we grow pigweed at here. And I always joke, and you've heard me say this before, I tell farmers that we grow pigweed so that you don't have to. But we do a lot of work with weed science, and also do work with cultural management studies, whether it's nitrogen fertility trials, whether it's fungicide trials. One of my favorite studies is the watermelon variety trial that we've done the past several years. And then also, we also do work with the IR4 program, so working to get pesticide registrations for specialty crops, as well as new and emerging crops. So the past few years, we've done a lot of work with sesame, fiber hemp, floral hemp, and also processing carrots. So that's just kind of a little bit about our station. If you've never been here before, or if you have a school group, community group, and you want to come out for a tour, I invite you to do that anytime. There's a lot of cool things to see here in the summertime. So before we get started, I just want to acknowledge a few people. The first would be our industry sponsors, Simplot, Certus Biological, Syngenta, Farm Credit, Quality Equipment, Trieste Ag, Telios Ag, Strickland Brothers, and the North Carolina Sweet Potato Commission. So without the generosity of these sponsors, we would not be eating fried chicken and barbecue here in about 3.5 hours. So please go visit with them, check out what they've brought today. Also want to thank the Sweet Potato Commission, the NC State faculty who are presenting today, and also Dr. Jonathan Schulteis, who organized and coordinated this program. And finally, I want to recognize my staff. So with the Horticultural Crops Research Station team, would you please raise your hand? So that they make all this possible, and I'm very blessed to work with a great group of people who sometimes I have this problem of just saying yes to everything, and then we'll figure it out later. And these guys always help me figure out, even off-the-wall requests, we always figure it out, we always make it work. And so everything from setting up for this field day to, every year our station, we'll do over 100 different individual field trials. We'll have work with about 30 different crops. And our team does a great job here. So I thank them a lot for what they do. And I mean, look at this nice stage that they created. So thank you.
So my name is Katie Jennings. I'm the weed scientist, vegetable and small fruit crops at NC State. And I'm just going to give you just a brief update, and then my student Kai Goebel, my PhD student, he's going to talk just a few minutes about some of the work he has done over the summer. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about some of the upcoming products that are being registered in sweet potatoes in North Carolina. Roger Batts with the IR4 project has some handouts, I believe, about the products that are going through registration in sweet potato. I don't see Roger. He's here somewhere, I'm sure. But anyhow, so I'm just going to go over a little bit part of that list that relates to weed science. And so some of the products that we have worked in over the past few years, or many years actually, to try and get registered for you in sweet potatoes through the IR4 program include Diquat and glufosinate or Rely, and those will be for pre-plant burn down of weeds, so they are going through the process. We also have Linuron, which you guys have heard me mention many years now. It is being worked on. I promise that it is going to be submitted to the EPA. And remember, Linuron will be a herbicide that you'll be able to apply broadcast post after transplanting. So this would be the first herbicide that would have some post-emergence activity that would be safe to the sweet potatoes, and it would control some of your emerged weeds, some annual grasses that would need to be pretty small, maybe 2 inches or less, your broadleaf weeds, small-seeded weeds like pigweed species, including Palmer amaranth, and some other weeds. They would have to be 6 inches or less. So, and it will also provide some soil residual control, so it has pre-emergence activity as well. So when we get that, it will be a good addition to the toolbox. That herbicide is from a different class, different herbicide class family, so that's also good for to prevent herbicide-resistant weed populations developing, if you can add that in with your other products that are already registered. We're also, our IR4 is also looking at fluoridone, which has been a herbicide that we have worked on for several years, and that will be another herbicide that you would apply like your Valor or flumioxazin, so it would be a pre-plant herbicide applied to the bed prior to transplanting. And that also has good activity on a lot of small-seeded broadleaf weeds and annual grasses. So with that, I'm gonna let Kai talk a little bit, and he's also gonna, I believe, mention some fluoridone work.
Yeah, so my name is Kai Goebel. I'm a PhD student in Katie's program, and I'll just talk briefly on some of the stuff we've been working on this summer. I guess we'll start with the fluoridone stuff. So we applied fluoridone in the field pre-transplant at both 6 days and the same day of transplant, 6 days before transplant and the day of transplanting, and with or without half an inch of irrigation. And so far from 2024, we saw that the rain or the rate did not make a difference on the injury or the yield for the sweet potato. So we repeated that 2 times this summer, and we'll see how the 2025 data pans out. And then I'll move into the survey work that I've been working on this summer. And so over the last 2 summers and then last winter, I went and surveyed across several counties, just touch on a few of them, Johnston, Sampson, Nash, Wilson, along with a few others. And we surveyed 5 fields in each county for the absence and presence, as well as a total count of weeds. And in the winter, we found common chickweed, annual bluegrass, mouse ear cress, and henbit to be the most common weed that we found. And in the summer, we found carpetweed, chickweed, Palmer amaranth, annual sedge, and yellow nut sedge. A couple of those weeds that are, Palmer amaranth was expected, and carpetweed and chickweed were very present in very high numbers. And it's something to consider when you think about your weed control programs in relation to guava root knot nematode, as they have the potential to serve as a host, so control can be important. And then another project we've been working on is a systems-based approach to a herbicide program. And just one of the treatments that we used was Valor and Command applied pre-transplant with dual magnum over the top. And that gave us a 95% control of Palmer amaranth, 97% control of annual sedge, and 96% control of grass. So just kind of highlighting the importance of using multiple herbicides in your program and the impact it had on weed control.
All right, so that concludes our presentation. I don't know if we have any time for questions. Okay. Jonathan says we can take a question or two. If not, we'll be around all evening. So thank you very much. Oh, is there a question? I don't have glasses on. The Linuron? So the question is, will we be able to tank mix anything with Linuron? So we have done some work where we tank mixed dual magnum with it, and we did see a little bit some increased injury. We have seen that with some other herbicides as well. When we tank mix dual magnum with another herbicide, sometimes we do see some toxicity or injury to the sweet potato. So we'll have to look at that closely if we want some other options, but we will look at that. Thank you for that question.
Good afternoon, everybody. Is it on? Okay, thank you. So my name is Alejandro Gutierrez Lee. I'm an economist. I work as a professor at A&T State in the Department of Agricultural Economics, and I specialize in labor market analysis. So today I just wanted to give you a brief update about the H-2A visa program. I'm sure you know what H-2A workers are, and you are probably relying yourselves on the program as well. So the H-2 program was created back in the 1960s when the government created a program for low-skilled labor, so to speak, for manual workers. The program was split in two groups, the H-2A for agriculture and the H-2B for non-agricultural things. Now, since then, the program has kept growing. Both of them have kept growing substantially. The H-2A in particular has seen a very rapid increase in demand. Back in the 90s, when the first H-2A visas were issued, we only brought like fewer than 1,000 people, but last year in 2024, almost 400,000 individuals came to the US with H-2A visas. The reason for that is that we have a huge problem finding workers in the United States. North Carolina is not the exception, and as a matter of fact, we are among the top 10 demanding states of H-2A workers. We are actually number 5 in the entire United States. The program is very popular in Florida, in Georgia, in Washington, in California, and we have been number 5 for many, many years. In less than a decade, the number of H-2A workers coming to North Carolina has increased by around 8,000 workers. And last year, we brought in roughly a little bit less than 26,000, and that's a lot of people if you think of it. The reason, well, is obvious. Many of the crops that we grow here are very labor intensive, like sweet potatoes, tobacco, Christmas trees. We have a very important poultry sector as well. Last week, for instance, I was in Asheville, in Western North Carolina with a group from the PSI, and we were analyzing the impact of Hurricane Helene 1 year after, and the common problem that most growers pointed to us was the labor issue. So for the apple growers, finding workers is a major problem. I had a conversation with a Christmas tree grower who told me that if it wasn't for the H-2E program, he would be out of business because that's the only way to find workers. Now, that being said, one major concern that we have or growers have associated with the program is the costs, right? There is no secret that while the H-2A program allows you to hire workers, it's a very expensive program. One of the reasons why we see a very huge increase in the demand for H-2A workers is that the program doesn't have a cap, meaning you can hire as many, or the US can bring as many workers as needed. That's not the case for H-2B, which has a cap. it has been set very low, and there are other issues associated with that program. But when it comes to H2A, the major problem is the cost, because according to government regulations, employers have to pay for transportation costs, have to pay for housing, have to provide meal subsidies and whatnot, and importantly, the wages are always have kept growing year over year, as you can see from this graph that is not mine, but from the Sweetpotato Commission, we know that the wages are a major issue. The wages have kept climbing, as I said. In North Carolina last year, the minimum wage for H2A workers was $15.81. This year is $16.16, so it grew by 2.2%. Around the country, we have seen wages going up, sometimes way above inflation. For instance, in Florida, there was a year in which the H2A wages went up by more than 10%, right? And inflation was well below that. So that's a problem. Now, there are some efforts being done in DC to kind of alleviate the costs. The information is changing rapidly, so I don't want to give you false expectations as to what's going to happen, but I can tell you that as recent as last week, the Department of Labor announced a change in the way they are going to be calculating the methodology for a change in the methodology for the estimation of the H2A minimum wages. So it's very likely that they may go down. Now, by how much and when, we don't know, because most likely the change is going to be subject to litigation. There are going to probably be lawsuits against the change and whatnot. But the bottom line being that there are efforts being made to contain the growth in the wages. In part, the wages have kept going up and up because of the methodology that they use to calculate the wages. The surveys that are being used or had been used for years were taking into consideration factors that were not necessarily reflecting local labor market conditions. And in particular, the minimum wages that the government establishes every year for H2A are broad across, regions in the U.S. For instance, the minimum wage in North Carolina is the same as in Virginia, even though the crops that we grow and the conditions are different. So that's the update that I have. So just to summarize, the program has kept growing. It is very likely that we will continue to grow because we haven't seen major breakthroughs in terms of automation in the production of things like sweet potatoes or Christmas trees and whatnot. We are not there yet in terms of automating the production processes. The costs have been going up, but there are efforts to control that, and some of them are actually being made here. So that's all that I wanted to say, unless you have questions.
My name is Lina Quesada. I am the deceased lady, vegetable pathologist at NC State. Adrian Gorney, my colleague, does nematology. I do non-nematology issues, so you can do the wiggle test. If your problem wiggles, you should go to Adrian. If it does not wiggle, you can come to me. Okay, so as you all know, because we have been working together for years, I really like to guide the research in my lab based on what is going on in the state. I use one-to-one conversations with you all and also the submissions to the Plant Disease and Insect Clinic to try to figure out what are sort of like the hot topics that we need to be touching on. Well, I did my refresher yesterday. I did procrastinate, I'm sorry. And I was looking at the clinic submissions, and it is really interesting since the black rot issue that we had in 2015, 2016, I kind of reverted to working on rhizopus because that is the priority that you all gave me when I was hired. But really, from looking at those clinic submissions, the number one issue has been Geotrichum sour rot. I know for those of you that are packers, that comes to no surprise, or those of you that are exporting, but it really has risen that pathosystem to the top in my lab. So we kind of like addressed the black rot issue. I'm happy to report we barely see it anymore. Rhizopus, we have good chemistries for. Then the next issue that we were working on was southern blight circular spot. And then Geotrichum is now the next one. So some updates there. For Southern Blight, that issue was brought to me by Brandon Parker a few years ago when he was an agent, and we were able to get a fungicide registered, which is called Elatus. I am sure many of you have heard of it already, especially because some of you may have been using Botran, either on your beds, hopefully not post-harvest, but if you still bear using it, you need to know that GA1 is gonna stop making Botran. So we really need to phase it out. Elatus is gonna be an excellent alternative along with things like Quadrastop and Miravis Prime. So we have been able to also secure those registrations for sweet potato. The labeling of some of those products is not specifically going to call out for use in beds because that is a very sweet potato specific wording. But you should be able to use it based on just like the field use of the label. The rates are there, no problem. Those products should cover the same pathogens and even more than what Botran was covering. So consider them if you are concerned about losing Botran. Okay, let's go back to Geotricum. So Geotricum is an issue that has been there for years. We have been trying furiously to work on it in the lab, but it's exceptionally difficult to replicate the disease in the lab. The thing will not infect. Even though it eats your sweet potatoes in your packing houses, it does not want to eat our sweet potatoes in our lab, which is very frustrating. So I was very lucky to recruit a brilliant scientist called Dr. Kelly Avila, who is right there. Kelly, can you wave your hand? There you go, there's Kelly. She loves it when I put her on the spot. She was able to develop the pathosystem to work with Geotricum sour rot. Now we have a reliable bioassay, so we are doing all the work that we already did with Fusarium, with black rot, to try to understand what are the environmental conditions that are needed for this disease, and more importantly, we have an assay to do fungicide trials so that we can secure fungicide registrations for this pathogen. So that's moving along. Another thing that we did this year that is really cool is I obviously try to use the clinic for data on pathogens, but many of you don't submit samples to the clinic. I'm not judging, I'm just mentioning. So I really need to get a different way to figure out that we're prioritizing the best things for our research. So Carlos, I'm also gonna put him on the spot. Say hi, Carlos, there he is a PhD student in my lab, and he has been doing surveys in sweet potato packing houses with the help of Tommy Batts, Seth Balance, Kobe Griffin. I'm also putting them in the spot. And we have been basically updating what we're seeing as far as sweet potato pathogens in the state. Another pathogen that has risen we're seeing it more, let's put it that way, is Macrophomina. So in the next few years, we're going to be really ramping up again on Rhizopus, Geotricum sour rot, and Macrophomina. For the other things, we have good tools. If I'm missing something, please alert me, but I think we're in a good place. Talking about fungicides, something that I wanted to mention that I'm very proud of, and Katie Jennings mentioned it, this leaflet from the IR4 project. Okay, so on 2020, myself, Katie Jennings, Anders Huseth, Adrian Gorney, and the folks from IR4, we all secured a task grant from the Foreign Ad Service. And Jonathan, I can't believe I almost forgot you, but Jonathan is part of that project too. A big goal of that grant was to secure fungicide, nematicide, herbicide, and insecticides registrations for you all. We have all been funded from that project for years. That grant is going to end in May. We already submitted a resubmission. Hopefully it'll get funded. But all of these projects from IR4 were partially supported by the task grant. So I think it's important that you all know that the sweet potato team has really been working together to bring you solutions in all the aspects of pest management. And I'm telling you about the things we have gotten labeled, like, Elatus, Miravis Prime, Archive, who, for those of you that are packers, that is a fludeoxonil azoxystrobin option. As you all know, I have been an advocate for stadium post-harvest, but with the emeralds in Europe, the difenoconazole component is an issue. Archive is stadium without the difenoconazole. So it's gonna have really good activity for Rhizopus, black rot, and other things, but you don't have to have the emerald concern with the difen. So that one got labeled to the project too. And we have in the pipeline Intuitive, which is gonna be another southern blight option, and all the things in the leaf that I'm not gonna list because they're from my colleagues' updates. But anyways, with that, both Carlos and Kelly have posters showing the Geotricum studies that we're doing and then the survey. So if you're curious about what things we're finding in packing houses, take a look. You can do it covertly, I promise you. So I know people don't like to be looking at disease data, but there's good information there, so I really encourage you to look at it. And I think that's it for my update. Any questions?
Hello, everybody. You can hear me, right? All right, good. Hi, I'm Jonathan Schulteis. I work in the Department of Horticultural Science, for those of you who don't know me, and I work on cultural production practices. And first of all, I want to say thank you all for coming. That's one, that this makes the field day when you come and attend it. And secondly, we tried to shorten this field day. We maybe did just a bit, although really we started it a little bit earlier because we were trying to get this done before dark. But the reality is we have so many different participants, which is a really great thing. So I want to say thank you for all those that have participated with the educational material that we have and the research and updating you on that. So I'm going to say a word or two because one of the things we've been working on are the guava root knot nematode. We have a large grant and there's a survey that has come out, and it's been very, very poorly filled in. We have 11 people or growers that have filled out that survey in North Carolina. We have as many growers in Mississippi that have filled out that survey. That's part of this grant that we're working on. We need you to fill out that survey because that doesn't look good because it makes it look like North Carolina may not be that interested in this problem. So please, I'm going to make a plea to fill out that survey. I want to thank those 11 growers or whoever who filled out that survey. But I thought I'd give that a little bit of a push today. And our agents will work with you to go ahead and fill that out, or if you have any questions about it. And if you could get that to us, I'm not giving you surveys to fill out today, but they've been sent out. They can work with you over the next 2 months. If we could get that, a number more of these surveys by the end of the year, that would be fine. But we really need that information. So now I'll go into the cultural management update. You probably have seen a poster in the back on nitrogen. We're trying to look at different rates to hopefully look at two new different clones that are going to be released by the breeding program. Baker Stickley is the one who's heading that work. Baker. Some of you may have visited with her. I think the dean might have visited and she gave her 2 cents. There'll be a quiz, Dean Fox, at the end as to what you learned there from that. But a couple key things I think that we saw, and this is very preliminary. We're looking at one clone that you'll hear more about from the breeding program. It's a yellow flesh clone, 15728, and that looked to really respond well to increased rates of nitrogen. So we're trying to get a beat on this before the clones are released. The other one, which you may be even more interested in, is the 091105. And in that one, where we did have the range from 0 to 160, we didn't seem to get that much difference between 40 and 160, which would say, okay, we probably don't need to be applying such a high rate. But again, we got to dig into some of that data. And the last thing I'll just mention on that, and this is just a thumbnail sketch of the results that we're sort of seeing, and these are preliminary. Covington actually had a yield decline at the higher rate, which was interesting to us. So we'll have to see how that holds up. So that's one area we're working on, and that's been supported by the North Carolina Sweet Potato Commission. Another area that we work quite a bit in is we're working in the rotation crops and how they might affect the guava root knot nematode incidence, and hopefully be able to grow sweet potatoes that are marketable. And we've done a number of these different trials over the years. One of the things that I know that the industry has much adopted is that we know we can grow peanuts ahead of the sweet potato crop in combination with Talone 2, and we get a big yield spike, and we get quality roots from that. A lot of the other types of rotation crops don't seem to work that well, and we get actually less yield. So those are some of the more common rotation crops that we've looked at, like soybean, cotton, some of those. The poster that we have another poster that Baker has done, and she's led that effort on the rotation crops with our agents who've been great, and all of our faculty that we work so closely with on this project. And this is looking at alternative rotation crops, because not everybody can grow sweet potatoes after peanuts. We don't have enough acreage to do that. And so we're looking at some other options. In that poster, she's looked at pearl millet, I think it's Sudex, and then soybean, which is susceptible as a host. And the pearl millet seems to work pretty well, as does Sudex. But take a look at that poster, and again, that's one of the posters that Baker's put together. And we're going to continue to work in that area. And we have some other fumigation trials. We're working with Adrian Gorney on that. That looked really promising, some of the work looking at different rates as well as different depths of what we were looking at. And again, we just harvested that, so we don't have that data. Another area of, excuse me, of real effort is looking at some of these new clones. And so we work very closely with the breeding program. And we put those clones out where they're not challenged by the nematodes or where they are challenged. We haven't had much success down at the Border Belt Station, even though they inoculated for those nematodes, guava root knot. And so we put some on the grower fields, thank goodness, because the 2 years in a row that we've been down at Border Belt, we really haven't had that kind of damage from guava root knot nematode from one reason or another. But we did harvest in one of these infested sites, and one of the things that's very interesting is the breeding program has developed markers to be able to see, okay, if it's included in that clone, then we should have resistance to this guava root knot nematode. The thing is, we need to be able to demonstrate that in the field. We were able to do that, I think, really well the other day from that harvest. And there's a clone that really looks, we thought, pretty promising. I'm not going to spoil that because you're going to get to see that, one of those clones, when the breeding program goes over some of these new clones that they're looking at. So we're real excited to work with them, to work with Adrian's program in particular. And then the last thing I'll mention, we're also doing some work with the length of the sweet potato plant and how that might influence yield. And Brandon Parker has done some pretty good work with that, and we were kind of culminating some of the work with the different planters. We felt like plant length was probably as critical as anything. We just harvested those 2 studies, and so we think we see some pretty good differences, but we got to look at the data. And I think I've covered some of the key areas, and I'll hand it off to Christy.
So my name is Christy Almeida. I'm running the micropropagation unit at NC State, or MPRU by short. If people don't know me, I'm the person, I'm just going to follow Lina's, I guess. I'm the clean seed person, the clean seed lady. So I mainly distribute clean stock for sweet potato certification programs. I'm into growers here in North Carolina. And then we try to distribute all this material, especially during the winter time, so then we have it ready for the season for the entire state. So part of my update today, aside from the production side that we do, it's all the research. We are running now an SCRI project that it's called Clean Seed. So for the production side, all the funding that we have is through the National Clean Plant Network, so this is a USDA program. We produce about 80,000 plants that we deliver every year to certified seed growers in North Carolina. For the research side of the program, we have this Clean Seed, where we basically are running a main goal, which is how we develop the best practices for efficient clean foundation seed production in the lab and in the greenhouse. The first thing that we are doing is basically to understand or to know how we can maximize the number of clean plants in the greenhouse. We are running these experiments in 3 states, in Mississippi, North Carolina, and Arkansas. We are basically growing the material, what we basically have in the greenhouse, all the varieties, and then growing them under what we currently do, which is HPS lights. And we are comparing that grow versus LED lights. So for all this data and all the results, my grad student, Sophia Reeves, I don't know where you are. Yeah, there you go. So Sophia is having over there a poster for more detailed results. But for this first study, we are seeing, of course, significant differences based on the two treatments, HPS versus LED lights. And of course, we see that the supplemental LED lights have a positive influence in the growth of the plants in the greenhouse and also in the development of the plants. A second thing that we are doing is how we can improve conditions to harden plants for in-field survival. So a lot of growers usually report that when they grow plants in the greenhouse, they are too tender before they go to the field. So then in the field, they see a lot of, plants dying. So the whole idea for us is like how we can improve these conditions to harden the plants in the greenhouse before we get them out to the field. So for this, we have multiple varieties, watering treatments, and then storage treatments. And then we set up these experiments in the greenhouse, we get the material out to the field, and then we collect yield data. We did these experiments also in 3 states, North Carolina, Arkansas, and Mississippi, and then we have done these experiments during 2023, 2024, and 2025. So far, we have data for 2023 and 2024. We haven't really seen significant differences in yield, but we have seen some differences in the standing count depending on the treatments. Again, all the details, Sophia is going to share that in the poster. And then for 2025 data, we haven't really collected the yielding yet, so we are going to get that hopefully towards the end of the month or early November. And then the last thing that we are doing is how we can set up strategies to monitor virus levels for quality control of the clean plants, basically of all the material that we grow in the greenhouses and that also our certified seed growers have in their greenhouses. We ran this experiment back in 2024, so we collected data there. And then what we have done is pretty much we went to certified seed growers' greenhouses and we collected samples there. We got about 200 samples, and then we test them in the lab. And then we just ran the basic or the standard, what we call virus testing that we do. Everything is molecular testing, PCR that we do in the lab. And so far, I'm happy to report that whatever the growers are doing in the greenhouse is going well. All the material tested negative for viruses. So they are working well in terms of sanitation, trying to avoid insects, as vector of viral diseases. So that's pretty good, I would say. I'm pretty proud of my growers. So last but not least, as you may know or as you may understand, we run a big operation. We produce about 80,000 plants in the greenhouse every year. So it's very labor intensive, talking about labor, right? So with that, I had this need to hire a new greenhouse manager just because, it was too much of stuff going on. And then with that, I'm happy to report that I was able to hire my new greenhouse manager, Zach Allen, if you can stand up, or there you go. So Zach was hired about 2 months ago, officially, I guess, less than a month ago, and he's been working already with us. So we are hoping to work together, of course, having and building all this relationship with certified seed growers and everybody who is interested in growing sweet potato plants in the greenhouse. So that's all that I have for now. If you have any questions, I'm here. Thank you.
Okay, I'm between you and the field stop, so I'll make this quick. I only got about an hour's worth of data to present, and I'm kidding. So my name is Tommy Batts. I help organize our guava team agents that we work with our guava root knot stuff issues. Put together 2 posters in the back. I'm going to go over them very briefly. You can go look at all the details. Please go look at them, and if you have any questions, let us know. But the first one was talking about in storage. We've had issues in the past where grower says, I put them in and they didn't have any galls, but when I send them to the packer 3 months later, they're galled and I'm getting lots of rejects. So we knew it was growing. Miss Ann Gallagher did a preliminary study last year, and her report is on that back table in the corner with a lot of our other guava stuff. So we added to that, and we looked at temperature and relative humidity. Basically did her same methodology, but added relative humidity with hobo units in 4 different locations. Based on what we could find, very roughly, and no stats were run, so I can't officially say this, but it seems there is something that we need to look at in terms of relative humidity shortly after. This is kind of what Ann had hypothesized, but based on the graph data, and again, not statistically run, so it's hard to say yes or no, but that is something that we probably do need to run again to confirm. One of the ways this methodology, basically we marked potatoes once a month, went back and checked them to check new galls, and I can't tell you the weird looks I got at the CVS when I went to go fingernail polish to do this. All these different colors. I didn't realize there were this many colors. But anyway, that's something we can look at, and using this methodology also for varietal looks. We're working with Craig and Ken's new varieties coming out to make sure it's not just masking it at the beginning, that it is holding that resistance through. The second poster is looking at new and old chemistries. Mainly, so we wanted to evaluate old and current and new, potentially future chemical options for growers, because this is a problem. We need to rely on all our methods to control this. And we looked at Telone, AgLogic, or Aldicarb, Celebro, Vellum, and Timerium, which is a new, it's a Syngenta product that is currently used in Zimbabwe for tobacco nematode control. Based on previous data, it looks pretty promising. So we wanted to look at that here. And then we did a couple of combinations of those aforementioned, and it tables on the poster if you're interested in those. I put statistics on that trial. We did run statistics. Be careful with those statistics. We need to keep looking into this deeper. But on average, those treatments that received Telone, either alone or in combination, had the lowest root knot numbers, and fumigation still carrying a lot of the weight. I understand that's an expensive shot, but it's still doing its job. In terms of galling and marketable yield, Timerium, the new product, seems to be performing equal to other non-fumigant nematicides such as Celebro or Vellum or AgLogic as well. We did save roots from both AgLogic and Timerium for to send off residues to see if we can get this. And also with the Timerium, I wanted to make sure that those roots held up in storage. So if we got something that made our roots go down in 4 months, it's not something we need to chase. We do need to look at this better to understand what Timerium and AgLogic, and so we can potentially gain registrations for these products for our growers. So are there any questions?